Oh yeah, well, here we are. Best podcast on YouTube. Find us posting every Thursday. Back again with the I Bet Fantasy Sports Podcast. How we doing
Yeah.
today?
Welcome. Yeah, it's good. Everything's good. Another interesting week. More trades being talked about. DeAndre Hopkins going to Kansas City. He'll help a little bit. He's slow,
Trade
but
that
they're going to
trade's
run
finalized,
certain
by the
routes
way.
for him. They'll probably run him in the slot and just, have him be like a first down maker. He still has great hands, good ball skills. I mean, he has no speed anymore, but I mean, he's probably a Hall of Famer. A lot of the receivers get in now with these certain numbers, but it's probably a Hall of Famer. They're getting a good piece of the puzzle. That's a pretty quiet guy too.
I mean, talk about a lot of great years on a terrible team. So
Yeah, and I mean, he didn't end it with going to another team, going to Tennessee. So he's out of purgatory now and gets a chance to win a ring.
yeah, I definitely agree. Well, we've got some good games on. We've got this first game of the week coming up tomorrow. We've got a very fraudulent team in the Minnesota Vikings and the
Yeah, in
Los
fantasy
Angeles
wise, by the
Rams.
way, and interesting, this is a no bye week week. So they do have this little break where nobody has a bye this week, and then next week there's two byes again. It's kind of interesting. Yeah, Minnesota, LA. I think Minnesota was kind of an overdue factor loss. They didn't lose by a lot. I mean, Detroit had to come back to win it. I think it's still a really good team, but I don't think I think that there's cracks with Darnold. I mean, even hear some trade talks for certain quarterbacks out there that maybe Stafford to go to Minnesota. That just doesn't seem likely to me. I mean, the Rams aren't even out of it yet, but in this game, I think definitely Rams defense. This is a tale of Rams are going to get a little bit healthier, but this game, Rams defense is not super stacked. Good offense, but very injured. Very middle of the road defense. I would expect Minnesota to score at least 28 to 31 points in this game. Darnold's a good play. Aaron Jones, he's the catalyst for this team. It really changes night and day when he's playing. Check on his hip injury, but he, hip and hamstring, but check on Jones should be good. And then Jefferson's a must play in this one. Hawkinson's been, starting to come back and be productive. And Addison in deeper leagues for sure is a go. For the Rams, it looks like they're going to get Cooper Kupp back. I think that boosts Stafford. And they have those other wide receivers like Atwell, and so they do have some offensive production here. I mean, Williams is good. I think the Rams will be about 9 or 10 points behind in this one. It just doesn't seem like they'll be able to keep up, even with a healthy Cooper Kupp and Atwell. And they've developed some other wide receivers here in the running game. Their best chance here is probably to try to run the ball if they can against this Minnesota defense. Again, Stafford's pretty much a statue back there, so the Minnesota Vikings pass rush should be a problem for them.
I think you may have missed a pretty big trade talk that just happened today. Cooper Kupp is likely going to be out of there. They're just
That's
looking.
I don't believe the reason I didn't focus on that is because I don't believe that trade's going to happen. Because if you look at the division the Rams are in, okay, yeah, they're 2 and whatever, but they're still in it, and that could happen. I don't think it's happening this week. If they go to 2 and 6, I think that trade could happen. But the Rams did have or if they go to 2 and 5, I should say, that could happen. The Rams have had a really tough schedule. Keep in mind that they face the NFC North, which is the best division in football, and they've taken some pretty close losses in those games to NFC North teams. And here's the last one. So they have not had things go their way in terms of matchups, and a lot of that has to do with that. I think the team is a little bit better. I don't think they're giving in this week. Kupp could be a trade guy, but I don't think it's this week
I
because
think the
these
big
trades. Remember,
indicator that if
in the NFL, trades happen. They happen Tuesdays or Wednesdays. Wednesdays today we had the Hopkins one, but that was essentially done yesterday probably, and they released it really early in the morning. So I'm guessing that Hopkins already is at their facility working with them.
Yeah, I think the big indicator for Kupp will be what his play time is in this game tomorrow. If we see a very low, very not a lot of plays to him, I think it's likely he'll be traded. But if we see him out there being a big factor like he normally is, then it shows that they're not worried about him getting hurt. They're sticking with him. So
Well, I don't know if it's that. I mean, you're not going to trade him if he's injured. He's going to play, right? So what they're going to hope is he gets through the game and he plays and is healthy. And if he does, then he's still, they'll still probably hold on to him. But I mean, this team, if they're giving in on the season, will be if they lose tomorrow, I think. And then you could see a trade that happens earlier in the night in the next week if that does happen. But that division is wide open still. I mean, they're only 2 games behind Seattle right now.
yeah, definitely they could still win. Could eke some out, but let's jump right into the next game. We've got the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Cincinnati Bengals, who finally scooped up a win in Cincinnati. I think this is going to be a tough game. I think this is going to be who can actually with the better of the worst teams here. I mean, neither
Yeah,
of them are playing like they used to.
I think Philadelphia's playing a little bit better against weaker teams, and I think Cincinnati, their defense has been pretty awful so far. I do think if you look at Burrow's numbers, he's a top 5 quarterback. I don't think there's any reason to not play him in this matchup. I think this is going to be a fairly high scoring game, a 31-28 game, 35-31. I'd play Burrow and Chase and Higgins in this for sure, in what I think is going to be a very high scoring game. In terms of Philadelphia, I think I think Hurts played one of his better games in a long time. If you look at his ranking, he's got to be in the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks right now. Saquon's been a machine. AJ Brown back helps a lot. Devonta Smith. I just think there's going to be too much Philadelphia, and Cincinnati's defense has not. It is really it's a bottom after being such a strong unit in like the past 5 years. It's a bottom 10 unit now. I think this is probably like a Philadelphia 31-21 victory.
Well, Cincinnati is going to be giving 2.5. I think you're all over that. I think I would be too. I don't know what they know that we don't, but it's a weird line. I wouldn't expect Cincinnati to be giving 2.5.
Well, they expect the Bengals to score points, and they expect the Eagles to score points. I think they're planning on a very high scoring game. It could be 31-28. I mean, it could be that close. But I do, if I was going to bet on this, I would not bet on the Bengals. They have not shown the ability to win, and I think this is one of those old past history things where it's like people are expecting the Bengals to get to 500 and make a run to get in the playoffs. But a lot of other people think, they're kind of done because their defense is not as good as it's been in past years.
Yeah, I definitely think they'll have a hard game out there, but let's jump right into the next one. We've got the Baltimore Ravens taking on the Cleveland Browns in Cleveland. Baltimore's giving 9.
Yeah, I mean, you want to run into buzzsaw that's Baltimore and Cleveland having to face that. I think, Jackson and Henry's leading the league in almost all the rushing categories. Flowers has been strong, and Mark Andrews is really coming on, showing the high level tight end he's been in the past. Those guys are all starters for Cleveland. Unfortunately, this was the worst thing in the NFL is that people were booing Deshaun Watson in Cleveland when he got injured. That's kind of a pathetic thing for a fan base to do. But Jameis Winston will get the start against a good defense in Baltimore, not the dominant defense of years past. They will give up points, just like they gave up to Tampa Bay last week. Chubb's back. That helps this team a lot, can get them a little bit of balance. These games, because they're division rivalry games, I think that 9 is a lot. I wouldn't look at that line. If I'm playing guys, though, I think Winston will be smart enough to get the ball to Njoku, who's been underutilized this year. If you have him as a fantasy tight end, you're thinking, hey, this guy should be number 1 tight end in football. Because then with Flacco at quarterback, he was. And I think you look at, Njoku, Chubb are plays in this one. Winston, I wouldn't be playing. Judy's kind of borderline in deeper leagues. But I think, you know what I would expect in this? This looks like it's a blowout on paper, but I think this is going to play really closer just because of the division factor. Maybe 28-21, but I'd be reluctant to lay that 9 points.
Yeah, it's tough to give them 9 points. I mean, even though it is the Browns and they have had a lot of struggles, I think 9's a lot. And I think we kind of saw that last week when Baltimore was running away with the game and Tampa Bay still managed to put up 31. So
yeah.
But let's jump into the next one. We've got the Tennessee Titans taking on the Detroit Lions in Detroit.
Yeah, an even worse line. 11. It's like this is like a college football line. I mean, Detroit is playing arguably like the best team in the NFC. And so, they're commanding the respect and, they went in and knocked off who everyone thought was the best team, which was Minnesota, which I do not agree with, but they knocked them off and played extremely well in a comeback win. I mean, Goff is a must start. He's been super hot. Gibbs and Montgomery. If you're rotating them, you're used to what you're going to get out of that. And you're just crossing your fingers that one or the other is going to vulture the touchdowns. I'm on Ross St. Brown. Happy to see him producing. I think Laporta has been a little bit of a disappointment for most fantasy owners, expecting him to be a top 5 guy. He's been more in the 10 to 15 range. He's still a must start if you have him because he'll be in the game plan in this one in what should be a fairly high scoring game. Tennessee's defense is not like the old Tennessee defense as we remember. Very soft defense, gives up a lot of yards. And I think that, they're going to have a tough time in this one. They're bailing out. They're going with Mason Rudolph in this one. Tony Pollard's iffy start for me. They got rid of Hopkins, obviously. So you got Ridley stepping up as the number 1. Ridley's maybe a kind of a sneaky play in this one because, I think at some point, the Detroit defense, they're fine, but they're not as dominant without Hutchinson rushing the quarterback. And so I think the Tennessee will score some points. I don't think it'll be enough. I think this probably is a in-hand game for Detroit, 31-17, especially playing at home.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think the 11's a lot, and I don't know. I think they are going to cover the 11, but it's not a game that I'd like to put my money on. So after that, we've got the Arizona Cardinals taking on the Miami Dolphins in Miami. When's Tua coming back? I think I saw a report. I don't remember exactly what it said, but I know that he's ready to play.
No, he
Said he
could
doesn't
come
want to wear
back
the
in this one.
Guardian cap.
I think that's pretty interesting. Tua had a really profound statement, said that he would, give his life for football, that he loves it. And I think that, I mean, you can't argue with a player's choices. He wants to play, and I think that's the decision he's making. And apparently, he's going to be back this week, which really does change. Arizona got a good win last week. They're super unpredictable. I don't like betting on them, or I like their fantasy guys. I think Murray's been top 10. Connor's been, good and maybe second tier running back, but he's been, top 10 or top 15 running back. Harrison Jr., his production's been kind of scattered. He had some couple good games early, and now he's averaging like 40 to 50 yards receiving. And then you have Trey McBride, who's been a top tight end. I think in terms of Miami's defense has been pretty good. They've been doing a good job staying in games. I think this is going to be a higher scoring game, though, with Tua back, because their offense will be more productive. I think it'll be a 28-21 Miami win, playing at home, getting a little healthy. I think, this team still has a lot of talent. We're not hearing about it because they haven't had the quarterback play, but with Tua playing, I think you'll see better production out of Achane and Mostert. And of course, it'll open things up for Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. So this team is, proceed with caution, but you're going to want to play Tyreek Hill. I don't know if I'd play Tua right away in this one. He's going to be a little bit rusty from coming back, but I think they're going to be more productive. I think they score 21 to 24 points in this game, and I do think they just edge out Arizona here in like 24-21, 24-17. Really close line. I probably would not bet on this one. I think it's going to be too close to call.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's going to be 24-21 Miami in this one. I think the 3.5 is they're going to make their money on these games. That's what they're doing. But we've got another good one after that. We've got the Atlanta Falcons taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Which quarterback is going to show that they're a fraud? I think.
Well, I mean, I haven't, I think that Cousins actually has had some games where it looks like he's an old guy. Like, he did not play great last week. After having the 500-yard passing game, he hasn't been as good since then. I think, they're relying a lot on Bijan, who's turning into a top 5 back. Drake London's been solid. Kyle Pitts has been solid. Those are your starters. I think if you start Cousins, if you have another guy, I think he ranks right around 12 to 15 right now in most fantasy leagues. I'd maybe be looking somewhere else. I haven't been impressed with the production and the consistency of the production, but I would say that in this game, I do see a lot of points scored. So I think if you're going to give the nod in him week to week, you may look at defenses. I'd probably give him the nod in this one. Tampa Bay is a bend don't break defense kind of offense. They score a lot of points. The defense gives up a lot of points week to week. They're giving up somewhere in the neighborhood of 28 to 30 points a game. I think right on the money there. This is the 31-28, a toss-up game. I mean, divisional game, very tough. This is a huge game for these teams. I mean, one of the bigger games of the schedule for them. So you realize, Tampa Bay is going to be smarting. They had some big injuries. So Atlanta goes in to Tampa Bay favored. Now we're thinking, we don't know if Mike Evans is going to play. We already know that they're missing what was his name? The second wide receiver.
Godwin.
Yeah, Godwin's out for the season, and he just had surgery. Mike Evans is iffy, probably not going to play. So we're looking at maybe Tampa Bay relying more on like Jalen McMillan, Sterling Shepard, Cade Otton, the tight end, Bucky Irving, and Rachaad White as the running backs. That's going to change the whole offense here. I think this is going to be a different played game. I would give the edge to Atlanta because of the injuries, 24-17 Atlanta. I'd probably play Bucky Irving. He's been playing really well, productive. And then I'd look at somebody like Otton, who's a more known commodity at wide receiver, but they're likely to be without Mike Evans, and we know Godwin's out for the year already.
Yeah, I'd expect a big game out of Bucky Irving in this game. Cade Otton, he's probably going to get a lot of touches as well. But I agree with you on this one. I think Atlanta's likely going to eke this one out. All right, next one coming up, we've got the New York Jets taking on the New England Patriots. Jets are giving 7.
Yeah, I think everyone was disappointed when they saw that Adams didn't have the production, but I also think that was kind of like running into a buzzsaw against that Pittsburgh defense in Pittsburgh, and I think that was a bad setup. I think against his New England team, you're going to see a game where The Jets will not have pressure because New England's offense has been terrible. So the Jets 7, I could see it. I could see the Jets winning by 14 in this one, and it'll feel like they're all of a sudden back again after this game. New England does not score points. I do think they got to boost a little bit with Drake May starting. I think they're developing some players, but they're really young. I think Stevenson's still okay. Not a guy I'd start. Maybe in deep leagues if you're using 3 backs or flex, maybe Stevenson comes in. Mario Douglas kind of, turning into a top wide receiver tight end. Hunter Henry getting a lot of production with Drake May. So those are guys that you kind of want to look at, but in much deeper leagues. Really, though, you look at the Patriots on offense, maybe they'll score 14 points. I see the Jets against this kind of just okay-ish defense, the Patriots. And again, their offense makes too many mistakes. So Jets will get more possessions. I see Jets 28-14 in this one. I think they run the ball a lot with Breece Hall and Braylon Allen. I think Rodgers gets 2 touchdowns. Adams has a good game. Wilson has a good game here. Conklin's been kind of like a 1 TD vulture guy. He's only in deeper kind of like weird tight end scoring leagues would I probably play him. Other than that, I do see New York Jets probably feeling like things are better after this game. But again, I mean, if you played New England, 17 times, you'd probably go 15-2. And one of their only other win, one of their only other few wins that they have was against New England earlier, where they won pretty handily.
Yeah, I think this is definitely going to be a must win for them. I think coming in
it's a must win.
1-6 right now. They don't win, they're kind of packing it all up and looking at next season already.
Yeah, they're 2-5, I think, and they can't go 2-6.
Cool. Well, let's jump into the next one. We've got the Green Bay Packers taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars in Jacksonville.
Yeah, this is one of those games where like the coach is like, okay, don't fall asleep on the opponent. Green Bay has been looking very good. They had another good win, a late win against Houston with their new kicker, Brandon McManus, kicking a big fuel on that one. Jordan Love. I mean, you're going to want to just play all your starters and cross your fingers that they don't fall asleep on the Jaguars. Jordan Love, Jacobs, Reed, Dobbs. Those are guys I'd all take chances on. Kraft is really emerging into a top flight, top 10 tight end. In terms of Jacksonville, they're getting a little bit better. I think you're seeing good production out of Bigsby. Lawrence he's not a guy I'd start. He'd be in my bottom next rung. He's in the bottom 10 quarterbacks in the NFL right now for production. Thomas and Kirk are iffy guys. Ingram's probably a better reliable option than somebody like Brian Thomas or Christian Kirk. Green Bay's defense, this is probably a game where Green Bay gets back on the takeaway track. They didn't have one last week against Houston, but Lawrence has been throwing the ball away. And I would say, look for the Packers secondary to pick a couple of these in something like a 31-10 walk for the Green Bay Packers in this game.
Yeah, I think we're really seeing Jordan Love. He's looking a lot like a quarterback who used to play for the Packers, except he hasn't stolen from a high school volleyball team yet. Other than that, the similarities are like on point.
Right. Let's hope that Jordan Love doesn't get into post-career fundraising efforts in Mississippi. But yeah, Jordan Love is taking more chances. But, a lot of quarterbacks always believed, the comparison between Rodgers and Favre were that, Rodgers didn't throw guys open enough and Favre always threw guys open and at his cost. I mean, I've seen Favre throw 5 interceptions in a game, in a playoff game against the Rams one year. It was horrendous, but, they weren't going to win anyway. They had no chance to win if he couldn't throw. So that was what he did. And he took a bunch of chances. And that's, I think Love does have that in him for sure.
Yeah, well, let's jump to the next game. We've got the Indianapolis Colts taking on the Houston Texans in Houston.
Indianapolis is kind of just motoring along. This is not a really exciting team. I like this team a lot more if Flacco's starting, but they're going with Richardson. Productive-wise, they're not very good with Richardson. I think with Flacco, the productivity goes way up. I think, Taylor is still a starter in most fantasy leagues, though his numbers are not top 15 or 20 like they could be. I think most teams go in with Richardson quarterbacking and stack the line and just say, let's see if Taylor can do anything. Not real fantasy starters here right now that I would look at. And I think Houston, this is one, they probably feel a little frustrated losing that game to the Packers last week. Stroud had a really bad game against a really good Packers defense. I think Stroud gets right this week. Mixon's been tremendous. He has not had many bad games this year. He had a huge game against the Packers. That was the only reason Houston was in that game. I think Diggs and Dell get right in this one. And Schultz is kind of an outside looking in tight end for this week as well. But I'd see Houston in this 31-17. Indianapolis does not look like they can score.
Yeah, and I think Mixon showed how valuable he can be on that team running against the Packers. So a pretty good run D but he ran right through him. And, I mean, if Stroud could have been able to just make a couple of those completions, they probably do come away with that win in that last game, but it did fall to the Packers. So next up, we've got the New Orleans Saints taking on the Los Angeles Chargers. I think we kind of touched on this one briefly. I think he could there could be a trade in between LA. I think Cooper Kupp could just go walk his way over to the LA Chargers. I don't see that being a bad play for him. I think if there's anywhere that he could go, I'd see it being there.
Well, honestly, I'd love that trade. I think that would make the Chargers all of a sudden a contender because they simply don't. Why would you waste your talented quarterback's year like Herbert? It doesn't make sense to me that they would get rid of everything in the cupboards and have him suffer through this year where he has no receiving talent. And he really doesn't. I mean, you can't count on a guy like Lad McConaughey. I mean, and these guys are not top flight receivers. They probably are ranked, they're lesser 50 or 60 or 70 guys. I guarantee none of these guys are starting in fantasy leagues. So let's go through this really quickly. It's an ugly game. New Orleans is depleted. This is the kind of game that the Chargers need. They can win this game. New Orleans is depleted. Rattler he's athletic. He just hasn't been able to do much with these receivers. And, they're missing a lot of guys. So you got Rattler, Kamara is still good, but all the teams are just going to stop the run against him because they can't throw. Olave, okay, they're missing one of their better wide receivers who's gone for the year. And you have Juwan Johnson, Taysom Hill's kind of iffy, might be back this week. This offense can't probably score 14 points against the Chargers. Chargers have been really good, and they've had a couple of these one-dimensional games where they've faced a team that can't do a lot offensively, doesn't have a lot of weapons. They've done really well in those games. They kind of just run the ball with Dobbins. Dobbins is a good start here. Herbert, again, probably low numbers, under 200 yards passing. Maybe he gets a TD, maybe he doesn't. He's like ranked 25th in the league. And this is a talented arm talent guy. It's the strangest thing in the world. I mean, if they're winning games a lot, it's okay. But yeah, you're right. I think Cooper Kupp to the Chargers, that's a really cool trade. That changes the fortunes of the Chargers. I think the Chargers are then a team that could win 10, 11 games and then maybe really scare somebody in the playoffs because they'd have some balance. Right now, they don't have any balance. So, playing against a Saints team, that isn't very good offensively right now because they've suffered so many injuries. I mean, I'd look for the Chargers in this one to win this like 20-13 or 20-14.
Best part about that trade is he doesn't have to move. Plays at the same stadium, doesn't have to stays at the same house. I mean, how
they should get a
better could it
cost
get for a
expense
guy?
like reduction for keeping his moving costs down.
Totally. And I will say, actually, because we did just jump over it, the Rams are open to paying part of his contract. They're only looking for a second-round pick, and they are open to paying some of that contract.
All right,
So
Adam Schefter.
I do think we likely are going to have a move here. But
is your phone ringing? Is your phone ringing off the hook, or what? Are you getting Adam Schefter like tidbits from?
No, it's on silent right now. But I do think one thing that I want to touch on is Spencer Rattler. We can see how tough it is for these rookies out there. I mean, look at a guy like Bryce Young who has no weapons and absolutely just fell apart and he got taken out. These guys are going in and it's tough for these rookies to make a play happen.
A lot of times I think a lot of this is to do with the offensive expectations and the offensive coaching and who you have and who aligns with you and your ideas is really the key. It's no different than any other relationship. The quarterback, head coach, or offensive coordinator relationships, just like a girlfriend or a marriage or anything like that. And if you're not on the same page, it's not going to work. And you can't force somebody to eat oatmeal when they want to eat Raisin Bran.
Yeah, and if they want a banana and you give them strawberries, they're just not going to be happy. So I mean,
it's not going to work either. Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. And I mean, I think Caleb, he was one of those guys that he's making it actually look really good right now. So for a rookie quarterback, I think
he is. And I don't even think, frankly, the Bears have the right coaching staff right now. I mean, I think that they're winning games, but we'll see if they win any of these big games they have when they're with games coming up. They have a big one. We're going to talk about it shortly.
We'll touch on that one shortly here. But before that, we've got to talk about the Buffalo-Seattle game in Seattle.
Yeah, I think this is a really good one. This is like a trip-up game potentially for Buffalo. Seattle's a little bit healthier on defense. That makes a big difference. This is a top 10 defense. Hasn't looked it because they have so many guys missing. They're gradually getting some guys back. Geno Smith's still good, so it keeps teams, off balance because they can score points. This is one of the more talented wide receiver cores with Metcalf and Jigba and Lockett. and even Fant and Walker and Charbonnet. This is a really good offense. I think this is a potential trip up game for Buffalo here, going to Seattle, and I would not be surprised. I mean, I do like what Buffalo's done with Amari Cooper. I think Josh Allen in this game should have a pretty productive game. Seattle's still not as healthy as they need to be. They have very young players on defense. I think Cook, Allen, Cooper are all good plays in this one. Deeper leagues, I'd take a look at Shakur, but those are the guys I would go with in this game. But I do think this is a game where it wouldn't be surprising, and I'm going to predict it, that Seattle wins this one 31-28. Seattle is winning the West right now. They're with the Niners struggling to put wins together. Seattle is in first place in that division.
It's like we forget that Geno Smith won comeback player of the year a year ago. I mean,
he's good. He's underrated because I think most teams think that against a really good defense, and this will be a good showing for him, that he doesn't make enough adjustments to play at that high level where he can win deep into the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. Now we've got a good one after this. We've got what would have been 2 rookie quarterbacks, except they're starting the Red Rocket out there. We've got the Carolina Panthers taking on the Denver Broncos and Bo Nix in Denver.
Well, I'm glad you think this is a good game because I'm not sure I'm going to be watching it. But, as far as Carolina goes, I think Chuba Hubbard's been getting some play. Again, Denver's not a powerful offensive team. This is a game that's going to be low scoring. So what that tells you right away is you're going to get some running back play. And, Hubbard's going to get chances to get carries because Denver's offense has looked better, but it's not going to blow anybody out right now. And so you're going to get, Carolina's going to have a chance in this game. I say Dalton, probably a pass touchdown, maybe an interception in this game. Not a huge guy, not a guy I'd want to play in fantasy. Deontay Johnson, somebody I'd probably look at in this one, and Hubbard for Carolina, I'd look at this one as well. Bo Nix ranks like about 20 in most quarterback leagues right now. Javonte Williams has been productive. Cortland Sutton coming on as a target now that Bo Nix is getting more comfortable. It's a low-scoring defensive game, 20-14. I would say Denver in this one, but very low scoring. Not a lot of fantasy guys here. I'd be wary to lay the 9 because I think this 9 is higher because of the New Orleans game, which was kind of a fakey game. I don't think that's a real look at really how New Orleans played or how Denver really deserves to be favored by 9. I think Denver is a team that doesn't score reliably enough in a reliable enough way to be favored by 9.
Yeah, the 9's tough on that one. It's Denver's getting a lot. I would be surprised if the score is like 17-10. That's probably what it'll end up as.
But then it's a tough game, right? Because Carolina got smoked by Washington, and Marcus Mariota played most of that game. And they're thinking, hey, but Marcus Mariota, people forget, was a really good starter for a Tennessee team that went to the playoffs, 4 years ago. So people forget he's a high quality quarterback if he's in a good system like he is in Washington now.
I think the difference was 4 years ago was Mariota was able to run. I think it's a little bit different now. He doesn't have the same feet he did because he was very, very 2-dimensional when he played on that Tennessee team. I don't think
he got a new set of feet or what?
Well, no, the tires wore out. Yeah, the tires wore out.
I thought okay, just checking.
No, we've got a good divisional matchup here in the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Raiders. I actually shouldn't even call it good. We have a divisional.
I'm just wondering on how your descriptors are where you're coming up with the descriptors on these games. Yeah, Kansas City at Las Vegas. Come on. I mean, it looks like again, it's another year where the Raiders are rebuilding. The only thing is I'd caution on this one is this is a team that kind of can beat them. There's some kind of old ghosts that come out. This is one of the traditional great rivalries in all of football. I mean, some of the greatest rivalries of the 60s were games where Kansas City played the Raiders. And so I would say that even in those great years, in recent years, Kansas City has tripped up to the Raiders before. I'm not saying that's going to happen in this one. I think Kansas City probably, this is a game where everything in the world says Kansas City just blow them out, take Kansas City a point. Kansas City's covered like 7 or 8, a lot of weeks in a row. If I'm betting that, I'm either going to bet against Kansas City but who loves taking the Raiders? But, a team's not supposed to cover that many weeks in a row. It just law of averages sets in. So I would say, let's look at the fantasy guys in this one. You probably want to play Hopkins and are excited about it. I wouldn't play Hopkins in this one. I think maybe he gets 50 yards. I don't think he's going to have a big game because I think what the Chiefs are doing now is they're just doing enough to win, right? So they're going to run Kareem Hunt and Carson Steele. That's how they're winning right now. They're just pounding the rock. They're moving it on third downs. They're throwing an occasional deep ball to Worthy. I think one thing is in this game, you're seeing in certain games, Kelsey is protecting and having to block more. It's probably a game where they block more. They're focusing on the run. So Kelsey, not a great play in this one. He's probably like 45, 50 yards. Maybe he sneaks in for a touchdown. But you're seeing him stay in more for blocking because this team is turning into a running team. Hopkins will help them, but he's slow. He's the 3rd down and 5 guy who you could throw the ball to in slot and in the middle of the field and move the chains, just like Kelsey. So I think that'll add some points, but I don't think there's great fantasy starters here. I think Hunt, if you were lucky enough to pick him up, keep him active every week. He's been dominant. He looks super healthy and fresh legs. Worthy's been good, but not really reliable. Kelsey, you're going to start him because just the potential of him is great, but I don't see a lot in this game because I think they do a lot of blocking with him more than they've used to. For the Raiders, let's see who they're going to go with quarterback. It's probably going to be Minshew again because O'Connell's injured. At Madison and White at running back, there's nobody to play there. Myers and Tucker, nothing at wide receiver. You're really just going to play Brock Bowers, who's had a really nice rookie year. So I think, on paper, this should be like 31-17 Chiefs. But would I be shocked if the Raiders somehow did something magical here? No, not really, because this divisional matchups are way different.
Well, we have a weird game here, and there's 2 bets I'd be hammering. The first one is Kelsey touchdown. I don't think he's scored at all throughout the first 7 weeks. The first 6 games, he's got no touchdowns. I think he's due. I think it just, like you said, law of averages. He's going to find his way into the end zone. But you're right. He has been doing a lot more blocking, and against the Raiders defense, who has Max Crosby rushing you almost every time, I wouldn't be surprised if he falls back and is picking up some more blocks for Patrick Mahomes back there. But I would also be jumping all over the Raiders plus 10. I mean, again, back to law of averages. There's just no way that Kansas City can continue to cover. And I also think this 10 is probably going to be somewhere more like 11 and a half come game day here.
Yeah, they could move, but I think the history of this matchup is this divisional matchup stuff. So I think, the book knows these numbers, and I think it'll be really interesting to see. I mean, the Raiders, if you look back at it, they have a tendency to come in, and I know these guys are heated for this matchup. Regardless of the schedules, they're heated in this matchup. It changes things a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be a fun game. Hopefully a good one. But after that, we do have a good one. It was going to be a rookie shootout until we had a big injury, but we've got the Chicago Bears taking on the Washington. What are they this year?
Commanders.
They are the Commanders. I almost said Nationals. Taking on the Washington Nationals. Taking on the Washington Commanders in Washington.
Yeah.
Without Jaden Daniels.
Right. He looks like he's going to be out. He's not going to practice. He didn't practice today. He's not going to practice until Friday potentially. So check the status. But more than likely, with a rib injury like that, the team looks at this probably as they're progressing really nicely. They're still on track to win the division. There's no sense in rushing him back. You don't want a guy who's a rookie being out there trying to protect one injury and then maybe some other injury falling, having, happen to him because he's worried about the one injury, and that can happen. So it's much smarter for him to rest, especially with somebody like Mariota as a capable backup in a game against this Bears team who's good, but we don't know how good they are right now. The Bears are, going into this as a road favorite, which is an interesting place, right? Based on Jaden Daniels not playing. So, what I'd say in this one is watch Mariota. He's good, risky start, right? Brian Robinson's been okay, but again, they're going to be forced and focused on stopping the run to see what Mariota is going to do. McLaurin's good. I would take everybody down a notch here in projections. So, maybe start McLaurin, but he's probably not the one he was with Jaden Daniels. In terms of the Bears, this Washington defense has been pretty good. So I think this is going to be a lower scoring game than people expect. I think this is a 2017 game, and I would go with the Redskins to beat the Bears. And the home field advantage is good. I would take the points. I love taking, home dogs. I think Caleb Williams will be productive, but I think the Washington defense is going to get to him. I think DeAndre Swift is going to have a good game because I think it's going to be low scoring where there's going to be a lot of running game. DJ Moore, cautionary play here, but he's had a nice year so far, and they are starting to look to him more. This offense will be more reliable. Cole Kmet is a maybe. Deeper leagues, he's ranked about 10 to 15 for tight ends. But I think it's a low-scoring game. 21-17, I'd give the edge to Washington in this one.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a big game out of Swift and the big game out of Robinson in this. Likely, I mean, we'll see some passing, but I think it's going to be just a running battle and who can outrun who in this one.
The Bears have the edge coming off the bye. That's a big edge in this, especially with Washington, suffering a huge injury like the Jaden Daniels injury. But I do think the home field advantage. I do think the youth of the Bears quarterback will play a factor in this one. I see Washington slightly edging him out. I think they're a slightly better team personnel wise.
Well, following that, we have the Dallas Cowboys taking on the San Francisco 49ers. Sunday night football in San Francisco. The Niners seem to be a letdown team if I've ever seen one. They couldn't win against a hurt Kansas City. I mean, if you're George Kittle, you're looking at Travis Kelce and you're like, is he better than me? If you're Purdy, you keep looking at Mahomes and you're like, what am I not doing? I mean, these guys, they've played multiple times, and I think the 49ers are 1-6 against them.
Yeah. And I would tell you, so going into this game, Dallas and San Francisco, NBC is probably thinking, we're going to get these two top teams. They'll probably be like, one will be like 6-1, 6-2. The other will be like 7-1, maybe. And here we have two teams that are, hanging on, needing a win. Probably the pressure of needing the win will make this game enjoyable. You have two teams that are kind of floundering a little bit. Purdy, who was looking good at times, looks like if, in that game against Kansas City, he looked rank amateur. I mean, he really cost them the game. If you look at it, I mean, it's hard to put a loss or a win on one player, but they always put the wins on the quarterback. So I think if you look at anything, he threw some terrible passes in this game that led to points off the board for the 49ers in key positions. So, I think the Niners played well enough to win last week against Kansas City, but they simply didn't get it done. I think this is a really bad situation for Dallas going into, they are coming off the bye. I think Dak be good. I think CeeDee Lamb will, they'll start those guys. Jake Ferguson, because again, they have no running game. Jake Ferguson, who to me is a mediocre tight end, becomes a big part of this offense, but only because they have such a lack of a running game. I think against the Niners defense, I think they are going to clamp on this. I think they will ignore the running game, just like most teams do, put a lot of pressure on Dak, get some turnovers. I think Niners win this game 27, something like 27-20, just because the strength of their defense is so much better than Dallas's defense. Dallas may get a little bit healthier. Could see Micah back in this one. DeMarcus Lawrence check status. It'll help. But I do think the 49ers, just because, Dallas doesn't have any pieces that the 49ers go in that game and they're like, CeeDee Lamb, okay. They're like, we know what we're going to do. We're going to wrap two on him, probably underneath and over the top on him, and just see, make Dax force it. He's going to throw one or two picks. It's just too much to ask of one matchup against a really good defense. That, even though when you look at the game last week, they'll say, Mahomes played poorly against 49ers. No, their defense is still top in the league. It's still a top 5 defense. I mean, that's what's keeping him in these games. They should have won that game just on defense alone, but Purdy threw the game away. Where I'd be concerned here is I think the Niners go back to what they do really well in this game, and especially in a game where Dallas probably is going to have a hard time scoring. They're going to go back and just run Mason and Guardeno. I'd play Mason for sure. Purdy will get some of those dump off things. Kittle's been playing great. He's been like a comfort outlet. I think like as a sleeper in this one, let's check the status of Debo. Again, these guys, you just got to have these guys, they're out. They've lost Ayuk for the year, right? So you still have depth here. Jawan Jennings, who had a really great week, I think it was 2 or 3 when they were trying to bring Ayuk back in the fold, is a great guy to look at here. So I'd say, Jennings is a good sleeper in this one. Kittle's been great. Mason should have a big game. I think the Niners just have too much on defense. I don't know how Dallas is going to score. Too one-dimensional on offense. I'd say this is 27-17 Niners win.
I think Kittle has a big game here. I think especially with Ayuk missing, I think Kittle's going to show that he is that main target. He still has some other great receivers, but with no Ayuk, Debo's great out there, but I think Kittle is going to be the one that Purdy starts to rely on. Kittle's either going to show his worth or he's going to show that they need to find another tight end here. But
yeah,
let's jump into the Monday night game. Steelers find themselves here again for some reason in a primetime game, taking on the New York Giants in Pittsburgh. What are your thoughts on this one?
I mean, it's why you want the flex schedule, because what are the Giants going to be able to do to Pittsburgh the way that they're playing defensively? I think not a lot. I mean, what's Daniel Jones, who's still going to be the starter now? So Jones is going to start, running back. They have the Singletary move has not been good. He has not been good. Tracy and him are going to get the carries. A Singleton's still a little bit dinged up. The wide receiver draft of Neighbors, excellent. He looks like the highest comparison would be somebody like a Randy Moss, which is he's not getting, but he looks like a really potential top flight wide receiver in the league. That's great. That's the good news. The bad news is Pittsburgh's defense is tough. I mean, Neighbors is probably a tough play this week. I think play him because he is that good, but I think it's going to be tough for Jones to get him the ball on a regular basis. I think the Pittsburgh defense, I think even though we saw Russ throw the ball and open up the field a little bit more, what did we see? Like we talked about this 2 weeks ago with Justin Fields, and I said, you can't run. What did Najee Harris and Jalen Warren all of a sudden lose their ability to run the ball? No, because they were running against 8 guys on defense. And now that Russell Wilson's opening up the offense, throwing those balls over the top, they're not even pretty. They're just kind of like these easy receivers love those balls, right? Because they're 50-50 balls. He must have thrown 5 of them in that game. I mean, there was nothing you didn't see. Like it was a weird offense. It was kind of like the Russell Wilson show where it was like loopy ball over the first screen, that it was nothing. They would roll them out. The line would go one way, he'd roll out the other way, and they'd loop the screen. They did that about 5 times. Then they had some outlets, short outlets to the tight ends. He didn't have, and then the only deep balls he took were up the sidelines. And that's pretty much, he never threw one really over the middle if you look at it, but it was successful because they do have talented wide receivers there. I mean, Pickens is a good wide receiver. I think if I'm a Pickens owner, I'm all of a sudden excited about having him when I wasn't at all about Fields because Fields wasn't throwing that ball. But I think in this game, I don't know why wouldn't Pittsburgh blow them out 34-14? I mean, to me, I think Wilson has a good game. I think Najee Harris is I'm really excited about having him right now. I think Pickens has another strong game because you can see that Wilson's just going to throw it to him. He doesn't care about the interceptions anymore. He seems way different now playing with Pittsburgh. Way more probably, a word you would use is, he's probably grateful now. To have this chance again.
We saw a great maturing moment at the end of the game when they asked him what his new catchphrase was going to be.
And he told them pretty much, said, "No Fred, no catchphrase."
Yeah.
So I think, I don't see why this is not a good game. This is why the flex schedule should be in use more and let's watch a good game because Pittsburgh, New York, I can't see that the Giants could score more than 17. I see Pittsburgh going up and down. I think they're going to get at least 2 turnovers off Daniel Jones. This is something like a 34-17 victory for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I agree with that one. I think something cool that we might have happen at some point in the season is we might get a dual quarterback threat back there. I'd love to see them play Fields and Wilson at the same time. I mean, it totally opens up the dynamic. And
at the same time, I see it like they used to do that. That was like Cordell Stewart. But at the same time, you don't want to hurt other quarterback's confidence here. And there's no reason if you have a guy that you can maybe win with, and that's Fields, and you have a guy that's winning, which is Wilson, I could see a play maybe, but I think that's a good situation to be in. I think when the Packers saw that they can win games with Malik Neighbors, I think that was exciting to them they think Malik Willis, I should say, right. That was exciting to them because they're thinking, okay, look, we could probably figure out a way to scheme a game together to win here. And the Steelers know if they can make it a doggy defensive battle, right, that they can probably win a game with Justin Fields if they have to. So I don't see them really risking the backup tight end position for something, but I do see in certain games where they would pull out all the stops and maybe in a game. I don't think it's this game because I don't think they're going to need it. I think they can play. They're going to play them. This is one of those things where it's like, you just play it straight up. They don't even really have to do anything. I just think that they'll be so much better defensively that Pittsburgh could go in bland and just run the ball a bunch of times, and there'll be enough over the middle and over the top for these wide receivers when they choose to just blow this thing open.
Yeah, I think if we're going to see a play like that, it's going to be in some sort of divisional game where they play somebody like the Ravens. Gotta make something happen.
When they're going to have to pull out the stops to try to get a win. That would be like, now that's a Monday night game I'd want to see right now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big game. Those are coming up too. So, hopefully they flex those and we get those in the big Sunday night and Monday night games.
Yeah, it'd be nice to start having some good games. Finally, we've had a bunch of just, turn off the TV and check the score at the end of the game here.
Well, I think Jeff Bezos is the one now, and he gets a decent game. The Thursday night games have been pretty crappy.
I remember when I saw the schedule for it last year, the first time he got it, and I was like, oh my God, what did he pay for?
I mean, like last weekend, New Orleans, Denver. Thanks for that one. Or
Yeah,
the week before they had the San Francisco Seattle game, which ended up being an okay game, but it didn't look like Seattle was in that. The Atlanta Tampa Bay game was epic. That was the best game that they've had there this year, which was a great game. The Kirk Cousins 500-yard game. But Dallas, New York, it's okay because it's the beginning of the year, but they have not been good generally, the Thursday night games.
Yeah, I think we've got some good ones though. And I think that flex schedule will probably start to take care of us here towards the end of the year. When do they start that? Week 10?
Well, yeah, they start some of those during the week on the Sunday games, and then they're going to start that later on the weekend games later in the season. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that wraps us up here for this week, week 8. We'll be back next Thursday for week 9.
Yeah, we'll see you. Good luck.